Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of SciChat. So, this week on SciChat, we're going to talk about email marketing. And we've talked about email marketing before, but I really want to focus in on, well, 2 points, but really we're going to start with 1 point, and it's going to lead us into the second point. But before we get into that, let me just tell you quickly what SciChat is all about. It's two things, actually, kind of two parts. The first part is what you're listening to, which is a weekly data-based webinar, a bunch of slides. We talk about some data, about some topic. Like I said, this week is email marketing. And then the second part of it is a Facebook group. You just search for SciChat on Facebook, and you'll find the Facebook group that maybe where you're listening to this now. And what that is more than 1,000 scientifically minded marketers. These are marketing folks who are really interested in doing their jobs, being better at their jobs, being better at marketing and communications through science, through the scientific method. So, as I said, this week we're going to talk about email marketing. And we've talked about email marketing before, but what I said is that I want to focus in on 1 point that I think is really, really important to understand when we're dealing with email marketing. And that is, I get this question a lot, both from people in in conferences when I'm speaking, and then just sort of in discussion with people. This comes up. This is one of the biggest unicorn and rainbows superstitions and myths in the marketing industry. It's about the frequency with which you send email. Okay? So let's start with this graph here. Now, what this graph represents is data from lead nurturing. So a lead nurturing campaign is essentially somebody takes an action on your website and you kick off a series of emails to them, right? So they sign up for an email list and then you email them, something 1 day later and something 2 days later, or something a week later, etc. And when you look at the number of lead nurturing emails in a lead nurturing campaign, you'll see that there is a slight drop off when you go from say 3 to 4 emails in that campaign. So as campaigns get a little bit longer, there is a very slight drop off in click-through rates. Okay. And it's interesting because, we don't typically think of lead nurturing as a one-off kind of thing, right? It's a chain of emails. But the reality of it is that this represents something called transactional email. Okay, and we're going to come back to that. But I just wanted to set the stage by introducing you to the topic or the concept of transactional email. So when we switch gears and we actually start to look at not necessarily transactional email, but I guess you could call it bulk email or like newsletter emailing. This is where instead of emailing somebody based on an action that they took on your site or somewhere else, you're emailing them because it's Tuesday and that's when you send out your newsletter, or you're emailing them because you have a new offer for them, whatever the day is. And when you look at those kind of email lists, and you look at average number of sends per month, that's that bottom axis, that horizontal axis here, and you compare that to the average click-through rate of those lists, you find that once you're at about 4 emails a month, it's about once a week, there is no huge drop-off to the right of that, right? So going from 4 emails, at least in this huge data set of 1.5 billion email sends, there is no huge drop-off between 4 emails a month, once a week, and once every day, essentially. That's really interesting, because what that tells me is that sending too much email isn't the scary monster under the bed that you might think it is, right? And so when I get people who ask me in conferences, how much email should I send? My answer is always more. Not only because of statistics like this, because look, let's do a little bit of math, right? If you're sending emails once a week right now, okay, and then just for argument's sake, to make math easy, say you're getting a 10% click-through rate in those emails, okay? If you double the amount of email you're sending, so now you're sending 8 emails a month, 2 a week, and suddenly your click-through rate goes to 8%. Now, you may panic and say, whoa, our click-through rate went down. However, you are now sending twice as much email and getting a slightly lower click-through rate, which means that the net number of clicks you're getting is still higher. Until your click-through rate drops to 5%, you're still getting more net clicks. So that's one part of email frequency that is extremely important. Another part of it is that the fear behind it, right? The one thing is that you think the click-through rate is going to go down. The other thing behind it is you think people are going to unsubscribe. Turns out almost the exact opposite is true. When you look at average number of sends per month, again, that's that horizontal axis here, And instead of looking at click-through rate, you look at unsubscription rate. What you find, unsubscription rate is the highest for email lists that are sent to most infrequently. So if I sign up to your email list and you don't email me for 6 months and then you email me in 6 months, I'm probably going to unsubscribe, but there's a higher likelihood that I'm going to unsubscribe. Because maybe I don't remember who you are. I don't remember that I signed up for your list. I don't have the same need that drove me to sign up for your list in the first place. There's a lot of reasons. And basically subscribers kind of shake out. The first couple of emails you're going to send somebody, they're going to shake out. They're going to unsubscribe. So if you're sending good email, if you're sending good content, sending more of it is not a bad thing. Okay. Now the other benefit, not only is higher click-through rates or more clicks a benefit of sending more email and therefore more responses, but it also allows you to do more testing, right? So I could show you graphs about the best day of the week to email, the best time of the day to email, the best subject lines to use, all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, those are just going to be hints to things that you should be testing and experimenting with, right? Because at the end of the day, the best data is going to be your data. And so what that means is you need to do a lot of your own experimentation, A/B testing, multivariate testing, etc. And the more email you are sending, the more opportunities you have to do that kind of testing. And so the more testing you're doing, naturally, you're going to be going in the right direction. Even if you start at a very low engagement rate, very low click-through rate, very low sales coming out of your emails, whatever the metric you're looking at is, even if you start at a very low number, if you're always testing, you're always going to be improving. And maybe that improvement is small. Maybe it's not going to be huge leaps and bounds every single test, but it's going to be a positive, it's going to be moves in positive directions. Meaning, the more frequently you send the email, the faster that rate of development will be. Okay. So now we've shown that you don't, when you're talking about mass mailing, you don't need to worry about frequency in terms of killing click-throughs. You don't need to worry about people really unsubscribing. Again, but test on your own list and just watch these numbers very carefully, but don't jump when click-through rate goes down by 1 point, because if you've doubled the number of emails, it's got to go down by half to even just be equal. Because when we look at a separate concept and we look at subscriber recency, now this is still for email lists that are emailed in that blast or newsletter fashion, and what we're looking at here is the number of days that have transpired since I signed up to the email list. So I went to your site and I wanted an ebook, or I just wanted to get, sign up for updates, whatever, so I put my email address into a box, clicked enter, and then the number of days that then passed before you sent me an email. If you send me an email that day, I have a very high click-through rate. You send me an email in a week, I have a lower click-through rate. Send me an email in a month, I have an even lower click-through rate. Basically, the longer the amount of time that has passed between me taking action on your site and you sending me an email, the lower my response rates are going to be. Okay. So now, when we take that into the lens of frequency, right, beyond getting smart with our emails, which we're going to talk about in a second, but if we're still just talking about blast emails and email newsletters, if you're sending once a month or once a week, there is a very good chance that I sign up to email lists and I might not get an email for a month or a week. But if you're sending multiple times a week, the average amount of time between me signing up to email list and me getting an email from you is going to decrease, right? So you're starting to send to more recent subscribers. And then when you go back to lead nurturing data, you see a similar thing. So days since the start of the lead nurturing campaign versus click-through rates, meaning I took an action on your site. Maybe it was signing up for an email list, or maybe it was something else. Maybe it was viewing a pricing page and you already had my email address. And that action kicked off a series of emails. The position in that series of emails, meaning if it was 1 day later or an hour later, or if it was 3 days later, the closer that email is in time to the action that I took on your site, the higher the click-through rate. Now that should start to paint a picture for you, because when we talk about frequency, we need to say, okay, A, we're going to send more email, but B, we also need to start thinking about how do we send email on our recipient's schedule, not just ours. And part of that is about frequency, meaning sending more email, increases the likelihood that it's going to be on their schedule. But additionally is breaking away from that blast, that newsletter paradigm, into a more transactional email paradigm, and a more transactional email model. Meaning we're going to be sending more email, but that email is going to be generated by actions taken by the recipients of those emails. And again, we look at unsubscription rates, and what you find here is that, again, the first couple of days, the first is, when I sign up to your email list, it's that first couple of days, that's when I'm going to unsubscribe. It's just what happens. People shake out. If they're going to unsubscribe from your email list, they're going to unsubscribe, right? It's not like, it's rare that I see email content from a company that varies wildly in quality and or relevance. Meaning, if I sign up to your email list and I see a couple of emails and they're good and I like them, it's real rare that something's going to happen in a couple of months. You're going to change what you're doing so dramatically that I'm going to unsubscribe. But if I sign up to email lists and I get a couple bad ones, then I'm just going to assume they're all going to be bad and I'm just going to unsubscribe right away. Do you see? So unsubscribers tend to shake out right away. So once somebody's in your email list and they've been there for a little bit, they've received some emails, the chances of them unsubscribing becomes fairly low or becomes lower. And then you can start using that transactional email. Start emailing them when they take specific. So if I come to your website and you have my email address and I go to your pricing page and you shoot me an email the next day about a discount that's available to me, that is magical and that's awesome. You're addressing a need that I have right then. Your brand is top of mind in my head, and you're sending email on your recipient schedule, not your own. So that is this week's edition of SciChat. I'd love to talk to all you guys in the Facebook group SciChat about email frequency and transactional emails and sending emails on your recipient schedules rather than your own. So thanks everybody for listening, and hope to talk to you again next week.